I don't know if you would characterize today's D-Day announcement as being a soft or hard launch, but does the administration have the right idea here in moving to crack down on those who are continuing to provide economic lifeline to Iran?
Kailey, nice to be with you. This administration has not had a single right idea the last 6 months waging this failed war. What we saw this week was the president pointed his finger at a country. He promised and then delivered crippling tariffs and hard economic punches, and that country turned out to be Canada. That's the administration we're dealing with. As we have an Arctic increasingly under contest, as we have North American missile defense concerns, as we need more energy for our economy, this president is picking a fight with Canada while increasingly losing ground against our actual geopolitical foes, China, Iran, and Russia.
Well, Congressman, if I can stick with the D-Day reference here, and it's great to have you back with us on Bloomberg. Treasury Secretary writing about Iran in the FT, the op-ed I'm sure that you saw, in which he promised economic D-Day. He said at dawn begins economic D-Day, the single greatest financial offensive ever marshaled against an adversary. We all remember, if we go back to our history class, that General Eisenhower wrote a letter. In fact, he wrote 2 letters on D-Day. One to the troops. That was the order of the day, very famously talking about your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well trained, equipped, and battle hardened. He will fight savagely. This is the stuff of history in the Smithsonian. The other letter that he wrote was in case of failure. It was found late in the game here, and he wrote at the end of that note, humility must always be the portion of any man who receives a claim earned in the blood of his followers and sacrifices of his friends. Indeed, he said, if any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone. Do you think this administration wrote a second letter?
Joe, I think even comparing Donald Trump to General Eisenhower is an affront to the legacy of Dwight Eisenhower. You and I have talked about this, Joe. You got to ignore what Donald Trump says. He's all talk, all bluster, all sizzle, no steak. Watch what he does. What has this administration done regarding Iran? What they have done was come in with a half-baked plan, first promising regime change and then rapidly backpedaling to now they're just simply trying to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened. They're trying to get to the status quo antebellum. That is what we have to watch with this administration. Ignore the words. They're all just trying to play to Twitter. Ignore the words, focus on the actions. The actions speak to a war that has been lost, a war that this administration knows has been lost, and they are trying to find an exit as rapidly and as elegantly as they can, and they're going to fail.
Well, I'd like to return to something you said a moment ago, Congressman, about the need to push back not only against Iran, but also Russia and China. Should the administration move on secondary sanctions against Chinese financial entities or consider inflicting actual punishment on China for continuing to provide financial support to Iran, is that not a good thing? Or does it risk economic blowback to Americans at home?
The question, Kailey, isn't about what good strategy would look like. The question is about, is this administration competent to execute against that strategy? And the answer is no. The job in Congress right now is to prevent a failed war from becoming a forever war. The job is not to empower this administration to wreak more havoc. Now, if you want to wind the clock back 18 months, imagine a competent president. You can see a situation where he doesn't pick a trade war with China that he loses. He doesn't pick a kinetic war with Iran that he loses. And instead, he goes to China and he says, we need 2 things from you. 2 things. 1, stop exporting fentanyl to the United States. They're responsible for about 98% of all fentanyl precursors. And number 2, stop importing Iranian oil. You do those 2 things, we can have a constructive conversation about trade. You don't do those 2 things, we're going to work with our allies to levy sanctions against you. That is a universe in which the United States could have accomplished meaningful action against the Ayatollah, and it could also have set the table for constructive dialogue with China on the terms of trade. That window has closed. This president has no credibility globally, and Congress's job is to prevent this failed administration from doing more damage to the American economy and American global leadership.
Well, you'll be back in Washington with your colleagues by the time the president is meeting with President Xi, assuming that meeting still takes place. Congressman, what is all of this going to mean for the $1.5 trillion a budget request for the Pentagon. What will be Democrats' response when this debate resumes?
I'm not voting for a single dollar to appropriate a failed and illegal war. I doubt Democrats in general are going to support this administration. The hubris and the arrogance is beyond belief that they think they can launch an illegal failed war and then turn around and ask Congress to appropriate it, no strings attached. Absolutely not. Again, this is not the situation as an American I want to be in. I don't want to watch my country having lost a war and thinking about exit strategies. But it's the situation we find ourselves in, because having fought in Afghanistan, I refuse to be a policymaker who sits by and does nothing as this country gets dragged into the third debacle of the 21st century. My constituents are sick of these forever wars overseas. They want to see the United States exercise mature, respected global leadership, and they want to see us eschew the kind of entangling alliances and foreign adventurism that George Washington has warned against, and his address serves us well 250 years later.
Congressman, I'm not sure you've seen the reporting about one of the sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, which, of course, just got relief from the Middle East after a record amount of time at sea, is now heading home. He will be returning with the knowledge that his father has been taken into ICE custody. There's similar stories about family members of service members who have been detained by ICE, and I wonder if they have any recourse here, and if you have any reflections on what it might mean to come home after such a long deployment to that news.
I don't know the particulars of that case. I have heard some broad descriptions of it. There is pathways for those who enlist to procure citizenship or at least legal status for their families. What I can speak to are the immigrants in detention that I have spoken with in Massachusetts. I met with a man who fled Uganda as a young child, having watched his two parents be murdered in front of him by Ugandan soldiers. He then fled to the United States, has been working in rehabilitative centers ever since. Spoke with another man from Brazil, came 20 years ago, working every single day since then, no criminal record. They're sitting in jail cells, and it's not where the American people want them. The American people want border security. They want pathway to legal certainty for those who are working and not a threat to public safety. And they want a rational immigration system that provides legal pathways. This administration is delivering none of those three.
Well, there's a lot to be said there, Congressman, and Democrats will have a chance to say it on the midterm election trail. We asked you last time about your travel plans. I know that your group has been very busy campaigning on behalf of other Democrats. What's the rest of this cycle going to look like for you? Will you be traveling the country to deliver this message?
Yes, I will be in other districts to stand side by side with the kind of candidates who inspire me. I'll point to one example, Nancy LaCour in South Carolina. She is a vice admiral who was fired by Pete Hegseth for being a woman. She's now running for Congress to hold his feet to the fire. And she's doing so in a way that invites Republicans into the conversation, that grounds her platform in common sense, and that refuses to allow MAGA to claim faith, family, and the flag, but rather demonstrates that Democrats can be the party of patriotism and of a middle-class agenda.